I'm Matt, and welcome to my teeny tiny little studio. So today I'm going to be painting a rubber tree that I found when I was on vacation or traveling through Hong Kong. So my wife and I were there for about a month, and we went to Victoria Peak on one day. So let's look at what the composition we're going to be looking at is. So here's the image. I usually work from videos, but I didn't have a good video of any of these trees, and I really just wanted to paint one of these trees today. So you can look at this image and you can see that essentially the rubber trees, just their roots grow down into the ground from the tops of the trunks. The trunk goes up and the roots grow down. So these trees will just take over the side of the hill if they allow the roots to actually reach the ground. So on the grounds, and this was a path that went up Victoria Peak, on the grounds, you'll see the groundkeepers going and just clipping the roots at the bottom. But it's important to know that the roots grow down and they kind of touch the ground. So they make these big spidery shapes, which is why they're interesting. So as I said, I don't have any video of this, but I do have this image, and I made a sketch of this as well, so I can show that to you. Here's the pen sketch I made. That's just a micron on paper. And I just tried to capture the kind of gnarly root settings, all the just, all the little root, how they set in the ground, and all of the kind of gnarled up pieces around here. I was careful just to show three things with the sketch itself. So I just wanted to show the core shadows, as you can kind of see on the edge of this one stalk right here. And I wanted to show the fill shadow. So this is like, the hatch marks that kind of come in. And then I wanted to show the cast shadow. And that's when you can see all these kind of dark areas in here as the stalks were blocking the light from others. So core shadow, fill shadow, and cast shadow is all I was really looking to capture here, and just get a sense of how all the gnarls work together. So I'll be working with that image, and I'll put that over here as a reference if I need it. But what we're really going to be doing is I'm going to be painting this in ink. So the ink that I'll be using is, looks like it is a Rhone ink, and this, I haven't used this very much, but it's an acrylic based ink. So the way I typically use inks is I just drop them right on the brush, and I don't mix them with anything, unless I'm doing some sort of a wash painting. But this, I'm not going to be doing a wash painting. So what we're going to do is, I'm just going to open this up, and I'm going to drop this right on the brush. And I have a sheet here that I use for kind of just getting the ink worked in, but so you can kind of see that here, although it's way out of focus. So you can see I have the sheet here that I just kind of get the ink worked into the brush, and that's it. So there's no water, there's no anything on this. So I can kind of also test on these sheets to see, oh, okay, so that's getting a good dry brush effect that I'm looking for. So I'm going to get just a little bit more on here, just to work this up enough. And step one is I'm interested in just getting the basic composition set out. So I'm going to take like kind of this bigger knot, and I'm just going to kind of touch in these sections here first. You'll notice that this knife edge brush, just the nature of the brush itself, it has these interesting textures that it creates, which is why I like it. That way you can get the brush to do more of the work than if you're working in pen like that little ink pen drawing I was showing you. You have to use all the million hatch strokes to get the shading that you want. But you can kind of just pull to the side with some of these, and you'll immediately see that you start to get some of your core shadows, fill shadows, and cast shadows just by pulling to the side, and you get like a really nice effect with this. You will not get this effect if you try and use any water. It just won't work because it mixes with the ink and makes it just run. You get a different kind of effect, but you just don't get this sort of you're not letting enough of the ink do the work in getting all these textures in here. Trees are really fun to paint for exactly that reason with this technique. Although you can do this on portraits, you can do this other types of landscapes, also architectural drawings as well. You just have to be a little bit more careful, and there's some other things. Maybe I'll do another show on buildings and architectural cars and that sort of thing at another time. So I'm just kind of pulling in some of these basic shapes, and I'm interested in this big trunk area in the back. And I'm going to exaggerate it, like just a little bit, because I want it to really stick out as a big gnarled mess. And I think in the photo reference, it's a little bit smaller than it looks. So one thing I want to point out is this area right here. Notice how I did kind of like the edge of it, and then through negative space I indicated the other side. That's an important technique when you're doing this, is using white space effectively. Now, one thing that I am wary of while I'm painting this is that the white space that is created by all of these interlocking branches is going to be hard for me not to fill up, because of the nature of how the brush is working. But I'm going to do my best and not do that. Leave some of that in place. Okay, about now, so I haven't loaded the brush up with ink, so I'm going to do that again. And you can start to see that in very small ways that the ink is starting to not play exactly as I'd like it. It's not dark, it's dark as I like it. So again, I just get my paper out here and I kind of load that up, test on the corner. It's a little dark. I'm gonna go with that though. So I'm gonna go over some of these other areas that I just did a second ago, just to get some dark tones in here. So I can get the edge of this branch, and kind of worked up this tree. So I'm going to go over here. Now something happens to this tree as the tree starts to come dramatically toward you. So what I do to capture that is I'm kind of, instead of just pulling straight across like I did kind of down here, I'm going to pull down and to the right like this. So I'm just kind of almost making a contour of how that tree branch looks. So you can see that now what that does is that it looks as if the light is hitting it from this side, and the tree goes up and then it comes towards you a bit right there. So I'm happy enough with that, so I'm going to move on. This branch looks like it kind of goes behind here, so I'm just going to kind of make that bad boy go back there like that. And then it looks like it kind of picks up on the other side, except there's a big gnarled section like right there. So now I'm just going to kind of touch in where it goes. So there's a big cluster of branches that all kind of come off this piece over here. So I'm going to pull this there down like that. And I'm going to kind of touch in those systems like that. I'm gonna get some more ink. And it looks like we've got a branch that kind of comes in here. I'm going to kind of make room for some white space there. And then it kind of comes around like that. And then we've got another one that goes over this whole section. And kind of comes around like that and meets up back there. So I'm just going to now drag in that shape. And these are in the back, so you notice I'm getting a little bit darker with how I'm doing this because they're in the back. They've got more cast shadow on them, so that's how I'm trying to capture that. In the end, I'm going to go and try and go and fill in core shadows, fill shadows, and cast shadows, but for right now, I'm just sort of working with the form of how all of these shapes interplay with each other. Now it looks like there's also a guy right here that's creating this like negative space in here. I want to definitely show that that's behind like that. The other thing about this technique is that you have to be patient. It's easy to get carried away and then quickly just want to drop everything in, by just big knifing strokes, but it doesn't result in a very careful picture. And that's what you're after, is you want something that just looks very carefully done. So one trick I use is before I put a mark down, no matter what the mark is or where it is, I have to think about it first. You think about the mark and what it goes, and imagine, what is it trying to accomplish? Is it trying to be a core shadow? Is it trying to be a fill shadow? Or is it trying to be a cast shadow? What is it doing? Now there's another big branch, so I'm going to just kind of pull this whole branch in so I can get it in the composition. Notice I left that whole area of the line unbroken or broken right there. It's because that's where the light is strongest hitting that branch, and so I'm going to use that white space. So I just kind of left that little space for myself, and it's this right here. So this branch is really light, and the reason is that it's in the foreground. So again, notice I'm pulling, kind of, you can see that it makes these contours that show the direction of where it is. And as I get up to that light section, I'm just going to get lighter and lighter. And I'm just going to be showing the shadow on that other branch, on the other side of that branch right there. I keep saying branches, but actually these are roots. That's an important thing to distinguish, I suppose. Okay, then there's another shape that kind of comes down like this. part of this root system. And it looks like it's got some, right on the other side of that, there's a little bit of a shadow that's cast on that. So I'm just going to show that. So this branch kind of fits, this large part of the root kind of fits in and goes behind these like this, but then there's a lot of sort of distractor shapes that are all the roots kind of coming down in here. So I'm just going to use the edge of the brush and kind of touch some of these in, just so I can get a sense of where they are, so I don't roll over them. Now, because I'm doing this in ink and there is no undersketch, like I don't really know kind of where I'm going to put things, so that's why I'm doing all these little indicator marks. I'm just kind of leaving it for myself to know where they are, so that I don't paint myself in a corner, so to speak. This is the part that's kind of difficult. I want to make this meet here, but I don't want it to kind of interrupt the other branch right there, because that's the lightest part of that. So I'm just going to use like the very edge of the brush here, and it's going to be a little dry, that's fine. And I'm just going to try and push that piece in like that. There. I'm going to call that good. Now I'm going to get some more ink here though, because the brush is getting a little bit dry. So let's just put this on here like this. As I work like this, as the ink sort of dries on the brush and I haven't kept it moist enough, the brush will start to fan out, and you want to avoid that as much as possible. And if you're getting that, then the best thing to do is to wait a second, clean your brush out, and just go put a tiny bit of water on it, and then pull it off with your fingers, and then let it dry a little bit, and then go again, and then it'll be kind of good to go. Okay, so we've got this back branch here that kind of goes up and again comes forward. So again, I'm going to do that sort of pull stroke to get this to come forward and really show that side of the light. And then it kind of knots up at the top there. So now we're gonna pull that around like that. Okay, I'll give you a little bit better shot of kind of what the whole composition is looking like. So right now it's just very basic, and I'm just working on these little pieces. So there's another branch that kind of goes up and that way. So, and it's kind of coming out of this guy. So I'm just going to touch in some shapes here. I think it goes up to like almost there. And then it starts to turn the corner. And then it crosses here, which is why I'm drawing it now. Obviously I'm doing this all in ink, so there's no erasing really. Now if I were working on thicker paper, it's important to note, if I were working on thicker paper, if you made a small mistake, you could go with an X-Acto blade and scrape it away. This is very thin paper though, which is, it's nice because it leaves a very interesting texture, and it kind of shows all of the texture. It also shows all of the mistakes. So you're not going to erase anything. You could use like kind of white marker, but if you use more than an extremely tiny amount of that, it starts to look like you painted it with like whiteout or something. It's not very good. You don't want to do that. All right, there's kind of like a little knot up at the top here, so I'm just gonna kind of indicate that larger shape of the knot, just like so. And then as it turns the corner, again, you notice I'm going to put in that fill shadow, that core shadow right there, just like that, and then I'm going to put in a fill shadow, like right that over top of it. I'm going to do it again. I'm just going to leave that edge so that you can see the light on that branch as it crosses. Right, and this branch tries to come towards us, so I'm going to be kind of changing my stroke a bit. There it is. So now this tree kind of continues up in this direction and goes, kind of makes a curve there. So I'm going to put that in like that. And then we're going to, it kind of comes out this direction now. There's a little bit of an edge to it on that side. Okay, so that's kind of like a major piece right there. There's also, back here, there's like a little bit of indication of another branch that goes off this direction, and it is here. You know, the thing about drawing these trees is that you're not really concerned with getting all the branches in exactly the right spot. You're more concerned with getting the textures right and just getting the mood and the feeling of the tree and the space. That's what you're really trying to do or say or communicate with this kind of art. You know, no one's going to look at the thing and say, that's not that banyan tree. They're not going to analyze it like that. But the closer that you can get the root systems to being accurate to what they were, the more it's going to actually look like that real plant, which I think is good. Okay, I'm going to show you the reference image again, just so that I can point out. If you look dead in the middle of the composition, there's that hole right there. So I'm trying to leave white space for that so I can fill it in with the smaller little branch systems. So let's go back to the composition. You can see here's my hole. So I'm going to leave it like right there. So let me get some more ink here. So you can start to see my brush is starting to split, like that extra hair at the top is coming off. So that's okay, but when I take a break, I'm going to probably wash this brush out, dry it, so I can be all fresh for when I come back. So let's start moving some of these shapes in. There's another tree that's like right here. And I'm just gonna kind of touch it in. Right like that, and then it kind of turns the corner and goes up. So let's get that guy in there. And I'm getting a little heavy-handed with the shading because it's in the back, so it's got shadow on it. I'm not so worried. This was an old line, and I've decided I just don't care about it that much, so I'm just gonna write right over it. Okay, so there's that shape. It also kind of comes down a bit here. It kind of goes back there like that. Maybe it connects up on the other side, or it could have supposed to connect right there, but I just didn't leave the room for it, so I'm going to just put that in like so. Alright, so now we've got some sort of gnarled up branch which is this starts to come towards us. So I'm just going to indicate that by giving a nice hard line on the other side and giving us maybe something right there to indicate that the branch kind of comes towards us and then turns away. I'm going to kind of maybe put a firmer edge on this. Now that I'm looking at the overall light and dark of the scene, I'm just going to go and maybe correct some of the edges here. I can see that may not be totally accurate to how light and dark they were. So I'm starting to get down into this area down here where it gets really dark, but I'm not going to just go and like, scratch it all in like that. I'm going to just kind of work it up slowly. So letting these pieces fall in together and just touching out like the bottoms of these. Again, using this white space right here. Just wanting to keep it, not wanting to mess it up. Okay. So there's a little bit of branch right there, and I'm going to kind of now get a little heavy-handed because this is all in the back. There's a little space that is like right there. Right? So I'm just going to reinforce all of the overlap pieces. It just goes right there like that. Because I want that piece to stick out. I want that to read. Because part of the reason the composition looks so cool is that these trees look cool is they have this kind of intersecting pieces, but you only know that by all these overlaps. So you got to keep those overlaps all there. So it's that little white spot right there. So the rest of these looks like there's maybe just some lines that kind of come down through here like so. Okay, so now I think I'm going to do maybe, I'm going to keep going on this other side because I don't want to, I'm reluctant to start on all of the little down shoots yet, because the longer you can put it off, the more you can get in these big shapes before you go into the pulling all of the smaller root systems in, the better, because you really want to get just like a strong composition for what the lines are doing, so that it doesn't just read like a big tangly mess that doesn't have kind of reality to it. And that's what it would be if I just went in and started hacking in all of the little tiny root systems right now. So I'm not going to do that. This trunk kind of goes back, way back here. So I'm just going to indicate this guy going all the way back here. And it's big. I think it's actually part of the main tree. Like I think what we're seeing here is mostly root systems. The main tree actually goes off this direction. So it's really not in the scene. So really we're just looking at tree roots. Which is part of the course. If you look at other pictures and paintings of banyan trees, oftentimes it's the root systems that are the interesting part, and so that's the part that gets drawn. People don't do like the actual big trunks themselves, unless they're giant trunks that have like a lot of root systems. Although you'll look in a park like Walled City Park in Hong Kong, they have a banyan tree area, banyan, and they have rubber trees in there as well. Banyan and rubber tree area, and it looks like there's like 40 or 50 trees, but it's all the same tree. All right, I'm going to get some more ink on here. And the reason it looks like all the same tree is that, the reason it looks like a ton of different trees is that the roots systems go down, they hit the ground, and they shoot up another trunk, and then they start over again. Okay, it's nice and dark. Okay, now I'm going to start kind of filling in. Just as important as the white space is these dark areas. So I want to kind of push some of these areas back so that you can see those white holes shining through. So the trees are now coming down towards this section where the leaves are starting to occlude over top. And essentially, what's going to happen is down in this area, we're going to have all of the leaves kind of go up in this direction, and then we'll have leaf forms, that sort of thing, and they'll be up here. And then we'll have the kind of smaller root systems come down and around the whole thing. But for right now, I'm just trying to concentrate on this section up here and just clarifying all of these forms so we can just see what is what goes in front, what goes in behind. Okay, there's another branch system. I think it's actually this guy. Okay, I'm just going to put this guy like this. When you're doing this, you will feel yourself get impatient. Like I can already feel myself getting impatient with this picture. Like I'm wanting to put it in faster, which is kind of funny because I've been live for 35 minutes. So like I've been actually painting this for maybe around 25 minutes or something like that. And you actually have a ton already down, but you still get impatient when you're doing this. I think it's because you start to anticipate the sort of ending pieces that you start to do, but you just treat it as a meditation. Slow down. Okay, so that's like kind of the main mass of root systems. Now we have this whole area over here that I need to start pulling down. So this guy is going to turn the corner. He's going to be the far out root, like that. And there's another piece. And I'm just going to kind of continue this guy around. I know it doesn't exactly match the reference, but compositionally, I want this piece to come down here. I remember, so when I was doing the sketch of this, I think I was a lot more careful and it was more of a study. But I was trying to, study what the thing looked like and how its systems of roots worked. Now I'm trying to create a composition. I'm not so worried about it being accurate to the tree, that sort of thing. Like I want it to anatomically look like the tree, but I'm more interested in just getting a good sort of feeling for how the tree looked. I'm not so stuck on making it look like this exact tree. So I'm making little decisions here and there with how I want the composition to look. Another thing to note is when you're doing this style, if you're pulling around, so like let's say I do like that, and then I do like down like that, and then I do right there, and then you get this kind of rhythm going here where you've got these three. Sorry, it's like down on the very bottom of the screen, so let me just move it up here. So I'm talking about this right here. So see this where you got 1, 2, and 3. So those pieces, it starts to look like it's not very realistic. So what you want to do in that case is you want to, let me put it up again. So what you want to do in that case is you want to just fill in these other parts here like this, so that it doesn't look like it's this arbitrary rhythm that you put in. Yeah, that looks a little better if it was in focus. Maybe if I get the brush in there, it'll get in focus. No, it doesn't want to. Computer says no. All right, so that's the area that I'm working on down here. I can move this camera though out a bit. So I'm just going to keep going in this section here. There's a stalk that's kind of back there, and it's got a lot of light on the front of it, so I'm just going to pull away from here. Get a dark section in there to get a little cast shadow over that, and then just let that kind of come off on the front like that. Again, same deal right there. Some dark sections. There's some sort of little dealie that goes this way, a little branch that goes this way, so I'm just gonna pull one right there. Best I can, try and outline this little section. So see, here's an example of what I want that overlap. I want that overlap, that. So it makes that little white piece kind of mirror each other right there. And I want another one down here. There's like that. It's a little white section, a little white piece that sticks out. Makes the composition interesting. Okay, so then this guy is going to come out over here. On the other side, and immediately has a branch. Like that. Okay, I'm going to do maybe an offshoot. This guy comes down like this. Alright, and then I'm going to do another offshoot. It's going to come down like this. Alright, I'm going to go back up here. I'm going to continue this branch. Just trying to find the logic of how the tree is. sitting in space here so that it all kind of visually makes sense. Okay. So now I'm going to go and put in some plant forms here. So I'm going to just load this up quite a bit. So down here, let's go look at the reference again so you can see it. Look at all those plants that happen on the diagonal on the bottom of the base of the root system of the tree. So what I'm trying to do is I want to get those in there. You'll notice that they're very light. They're actually darker than the root systems though, these trunks that you're seeing down there. So that's a good thing to note. Only that one piece of the foliage down there you'll see is lighter than the piece there. So there's two types. One is lighter than the other one. So, and the one that's darker is darker than the root system itself. So I'm going to go in and start just pulling in some of those shapes, and I'm just going to do it like this. I'm just almost doing like a cross-hatch sort of pattern with the brush. I'm starting to cover up this section here. Okay, get some more ink on there. So again, I'm doing the dark section here first. So, and I've made it darker than it is. That's totally fine. Okay. Now you notice that there's like this light section at the top of these. That's how I'm going to get the bottom pieces here. So I'm going to now pull in sections of leaves. I just like so. Okay. And now I'm going to get like the darker kind of understory back in. There. At this point, I'm not really worried about larger forms. I'm not worried about kind of fit and filling. I don't need to go and put in all of and make the entire page fill in with this kind of stuff. I'm not worried about that. I'm more just trying to get the shapes in there that look like they're indicated from the image, just to get kind of almost the composition right. And notice I'm just going right over top of this branch section right here. Not even worrying about it. So now I'm going to kind of go up here, get this section where it was. Let's get some more ink on here. I mentioned earlier that this is an acrylic ink. I don't work with it very often, but I find that it's very similar to other inks. The only ink that it's not like is one of my favorites to work with, which is Deleter number 4. It's like a manga ink, and the reason it's different is that the binder in it almost turns into this kind of it dries like almost like a plastic. So if you try and do this technique with that ink, it gets really sticky and it's like unworkable, and it just turns into kind of a mess, and it really gums your brush up. I think on some of their inks they even say only for pens, so they know what the story is with those. But most inks you can do this with, where you can just drop them right on the brush, and then it remains sort of workable for a very long time. All right. Okay, I'm starting to get too precious with all these little leaf forms. I'm going to go down in this section down here. So you can kind of experiment with mark making and know what you're gonna feel like looks like the leaves that you're trying to get in there. I wouldn't worry about getting them perfect or having it look exactly like what's there or any of that. You just want to get the kind of the shape of the leaves is really what you're after, and you're trying to indicate leaves. You're not trying to paint individual leaves. Put in some stalks like that. Another thing worth mentioning if you're trying to do this is oftentimes more when I'm painting than when I'm drawing, but even sometimes when I'm drawing, it often feels like you've started a thing off and then it just looks like crap. And then you're just like kind of spending a lot of your time trying to fix something. And that's totally normal. Everybody goes through that. So don't worry if it's not coming out exactly how you wanted. It's totally normal. And sometimes you just have to start over. Like that's a real thing. So it's best just to try and enjoy the process of it. Okay, so it's starting to get pretty filled in at this point. I still have this kind of area here, which doesn't look very logical. So I'm gonna fork this guy off and just sort of build some structure in here of how this guy is supposed to look. Yeah, right like that. gonna cross another one over here. Finish that statement. Now, up here, we have this piece going this way, this piece, and it kind of curves and goes back there. There's also one right there. Right, like that. That kind of comes around from the other side. So it's got a little bit of a knot there, so I'm just going to paint it in. Like that. Okay. I'm going to go and now get some of these leaf forms up on the top. So right up in here, I'm just going to go and kind of knife in some leaf forms. Right, and I'm just going to call those leaf forms. Those are going to be my make them go right over the top. Right there. And then I'm going to bring them down here. So there's kind of some major leaf forms. I'm going to put some more up here. There we go. Some leaf forms, put those across. Pick them up, put them right there. So there's some of those up in there. There's some right there. This kind of mess. Right there. Okay. Okay. So I've got some, I'm going to switch brushes for just a second because this is taking a while. So I'm going to get my fan brush. So I'm going to drop some ink on this. And again, I'm dropping it just right on the brush. So after I get enough of this sort of saturated in this brush, now I'm just going to kind of get off some of the excess. And now I'm just going to sort of drop some shapes in here. There we go. So once you've got like the major leaf shapes, sort of the major lights and darks of the leaf shapes, which I think I have, like this, and there's this up here, and then there's just little offshoot ones, then I use this brush, and I come in here to just do little things It gives a different texture that kind of reads as inks, or reads as leaves rather. And I can kind of cover up some of the dark work that I did. And then you get the overall feeling of the leaf shapes as they're in there. So I'm going to do a little bit more of this, and then I'm going to go on the 10-minute break. But I just want to fill in some of these towards the top and maybe some of these down towards the bottom as well. Okay, so now I'm just going to put some of these around and back here. I want to make sure that I don't ruin that edge. There we go. Don't ruin that edge. It wouldn't be the end of the world, but I'd rather keep it for the time being. I'm going to get some more ink on this brush. And I'm going to get some of these leaves in front of these branches. Some behind, some in front. Just creating space. So I'm mostly starting to think about just how I want the composition to look. So leaving the space in the middle here, and I can just kind of put in and suggest some leaves in around it, like this. And then I can think about, what does the bottom half of this look like? Maybe just a couple, but I'm gonna leave it really open right there. A lot more open than is in the actual picture, because I'm gonna fill it in, because still we have all those like down roots to fill in. These kind of leaves trail off as they're in the distance back here. But I really do want to, I'm wanting to kind of, if this is the end of the composition, I'm wanting to kind of put something in. Like if I imagine like an imaginary line that kind of goes this way, I want to kind of work up to that line. So I'm not trying to fit and fill my whole page. Like I can trim the paper down to whatever size I want, but I want to kind of make a scene out of what I have here. So I'm kind of filling in this section here. As this brush starts to lose ink on it, it gets kind of an interesting little gray texture on it that I kind of like. It just gets better and better as I move down towards the bottom of this picture. Okay, I'm going to leave that right there, like so. Like that. I'm going to kind of put in this bottom base piece. Okay, I'm going to leave that right like that. I keep saying I'm going to leave that right like that, and then I go in and do something on it. Okay, I'm going to leave it right like that. There it is. There it is. I'm done. Okay, so this section, I lied. Okay, so this section is done. Now I'm going to go over and see on this side. And what I want to see is what's in the picture. And it looks like it's largely dark. Here, let's go and check it out. It's largely dark, but there are some sort of root system pieces that come out of there. And there's some tree forms and leaves and branches and whatnot. So let's go back, and I'm going to load up this brush again. Wipe off the XX ink. And I'm going to kind of work in, and I think this is going to be the edge right here. I'm just going to work to here. So I'm just going to put sort of getting these leaf shapes in like so. Okay, and then now I'm going to sort of put in some here, because these are kind of coming in off of the composition side. Like that. And then now we're going to get up into these leaves that are up here. I'm going to kind of leave a space here. Like I want this space that I want to leave here, because that's going to be some sort of fill-in brushwork, but then also Also, just as part of the composition, I like that, and that. So I'm just going to try and leave those in as light spaces. We'll see what happens with as we work towards the rest of the drawing, but that's kind of what I'm going to go for leaving. So right now, I've been painting for about an hour on this. So, and we're getting dangerously close to being done. Now, I had originally only wanted to stream for an hour, but I'm just so close to finishing this picture that I might as well just keep going. Okay, so as far as the composition looks, I like that. And I'm going to stay with those edges. I like those the way they are. It's kind of shifted a bit, so if if and when I decide to sell this one, I would probably trim it down and true it up, and just straighten it up just a bit, and cut that piece. Cut that piece and sign it. So I'd cut it down so it'd be smaller than what it is right now. Okay, so I'm going to take a break for 10 minutes, and we will come back and then finish up these small little pieces, and that'll be that, and then we'll be done. So you can go and take a bio break, get some coffee. I'll do the same, and then I'll see you back in 10. Okay, so here we are coming back again. I'm Matt Queen. This is my teeny tiny little studio. We have been painting a rubber tree using a reference image that I took while traveling in Hong Kong. So I was there for, my wife and I were there for about a month. And this was on Victoria Peak. So this is the tree that we have been painting for the last hour or so. And the idea was to capture some of the kind of knotty mess of all of those root systems that grow out of the tree and hit the ground. So as I showed earlier, I made a sketch of this tree. So, and the sketch looks like this, a little ink drawing. This is, I think the sketch is probably more true to the actual dimensions of the tree and the root systems themselves. So if we go back and look, so there's the photo, there's the sketch, photo, sketch. So what I've been painting the whole time looks a little bit different. So I've taken a lot of compositional leeway. I've made this this section here, this hole, much bigger, and I haven't kind of filled in this section yet. You'll notice in the photo, if we go back and look at it, that it's kind of largely filled in on that side with a big branch that comes in. I haven't done that piece yet. And I also haven't done all of the tiny shooting down pieces that make this the most interesting. So I've tried to hold off and not make all of those pieces in the beginning because I wanted to get all of the structure and all of the sort of background sort of leaf texture in first. Now I can go in and put those kind of bigger sections and all of those little shooting down parts. So let's do that big trunk first. So I'm going to use my my knife brush. I have gone through and cleaned these. I just clean them with water, and then I just use my fingers like this to just dry them off. So when I'm doing this dry brush technique, you want to make sure that they're not wet. Any sort of excess water, you don't want that excess water to mix with the ink because it will then make everything, you won't be able to get these kind of textures with the brush at all. So I will open up this ink. It's Rowan and Downey acrylic ink, as I had described in the beginning. I will put that in the description of the ink that I used on this. I didn't put it in the description for the live event here because I wasn't sure that I was going to just use that one and maybe have used something else. So I just wipe off the excess ink, put it directly on the brush, wipe it off here, and I can go and kind of test it and see if it's doing what I want to do, and it is. Okay, so off this section was a big tree branch. So I'm just going to kind of, as I did before, I'm just going to pull in out here and I'm just going to touch the indication of where that tree kind of goes. And I'm not going to go outside of my composition that I had here already. And I'm just going to pull in core shadows, right? As I described before. And I want to leave some of those leaves in the things. This is just, I'm lightly going to indicate this guy in the background. That's all I'm trying to do is just lightly indicate. And I want this to come in front. Down here like this. There it is. There we go. So I'm going to kind of pull this guy up here, get some, maybe some interesting parts happening in here, like that. Maybe some little pieces, like that. There it is. Okay, I'm going to call that trunk part in there and done. Now I'm going to switch brushes and I'm going to use this fan brush. And really, I'm just using the fan brush so I could use the edge of it. And I just put the ink right on the fan brush. And then I'll wipe off the excess. So here it is, just wipe off the excess ink. But I'm going to leave it mostly dry. I'm not going to wipe a whole lot off because I want enough ink to kind of get all these little pieces in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull in a bunch of these little shapes like this. This is the fun part that I've basically been waiting for this whole time, is to pull all these in like this. This is the fun part. This is not the nerve-wracking part. Like, you might be looking at this thinking, wait, you're just putting lines over top of your picture. Like, what if it's not the right one? Or what if you mess up? Or what if it gets too dark? Or all these sort of worries. Don't worry about it. Ink drawings are pretty forgiving in that way, in terms of putting lines over top of lines, especially when you're working with this sort of technique. It's gonna look a little messy, and a randomly misplaced line is not going to show. It's not going to detract from the whole thing. You're not going to mess up. It's going to be just fine. Also, like if you anchor your palm and then you just hold the brush like this and use your arm, you get these kind of confident lines. That's what you want. You want confident lines. Get some more ink on there. The more confident your lines, the better. In fact, an unperfectly placed confident line is better than a perfectly placed unconfident one. So just keep that in mind. You just want confident lines. Drag all these little parts in. Putting in some more leaf forms around here, just to kind of fill in this area a bit. When the ink dries, it doesn't dry like this totally black, and I really like it when it's totally black. So I'll actually go in and go over sections that I want to be just black again. Okay. I think I'm just about done with this. I may go in and put some little details here and there, like on the trunks, and maybe call out some of these overlaps a little bit more strongly, but all in all, I think I'm pretty much at least 95% done with this. So I'm going to call this good, and thanks for sitting and watching this with me. I hope that you found this helpful, and hopefully you'll try this at home. Go ahead and subscribe to my channel. You can find out when the next update will be, and when I'll be doing this again. Next time I'll probably be using video, but I'll definitely be using travel footage, so you'll see something from around the world. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it.